Hello and welcome to Backstage with Geoffrey Morrissey. I am your host, Geoffrey Morrissey. Today, we are not backstage. We are actually in a food court with Dan Croll, who just released an amazing album called Emerging Adulthood. So, Dan, this album really is great on its own, but it becomes even more impressive when you realize that music was actually your fallback from rugby. So, I have to wonder, does your background in rugby influence the way that you make music?
Massively. It's to be playing competitive sport at a high level for all of your life up until 18 is has a huge impact on, I guess, who you are. And yeah, very, very competitive in everything I do. And I think after the first record, after that whole cycle kind of had finished, I was maybe having like a few kind of issues personally, and like I kind of had a few trust issues, and so it was like this thing of like, right, I can just rely on me and I can compete with me and see what I can do, you know. And so that idea to take every single bit of it on myself was it was definitely driven by that kind of competitive background.
And I'm hesitant to ask whether you won a game with yourself, but are you happy with how everything came out?
Yeah, definitely. I set these kind of clear aims from the start. It was like, you know, I want to write this record in 5-6 months. I want to record it in 2 months. I want to record it outside of the UK, and I want to play every instrument on it. And so that, you know, each one of those boxes was ticked. And so yeah, it was once the album was finished, it was a great feeling of like, all right, I know I can do it. It was tough. Like, it wasn't like this kind of joyous feeling afterwards. I was tired, you know. It took a lot out of me, but I kind of found my limits, I guess, for the first time, which was really cool.
And one of the best parts about that 5-month writing period is that it's almost like a real quick ephemeral snapshot of where you were
At that time. Yeah, definitely. The first album, there were songs that were like 4 years old, and so I was a completely different person then. That first album was like almost like more of a mixtape than like a kind of cohesive body of work, and so that's why I set that task. You know, I didn't really want to do the mixtape kind of style thing again, and I think I'd seen a few reviews of that first album that, you know, maybe pinned it against me, that it wasn't like a cohesive body of music, and so I think it was definitely something that shaped me up for this second record, to do it in one specific moment of time.
something you would look to do again, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. I think the approach of like limiting yourself time-wise is really good, because it creates a very honest representation of you at that time. So I'd definitely do that again. As for playing all the instruments again, I think maybe the next one would be more of a kind of collaborative effort, you know, so that take that pressure off myself this time.
Well, I mean, and with playing all the instruments, it's a very DIY kind of feel, and a lot of times pop music isn't associated with the DIY kind of scene. So it was a really interesting sort of thought to hear someone doing this all DIY in a pop realm.
Yeah, definitely. I think with pop, I think, or like at least I felt the pressure to, when I say I, you know, play all the instruments on the record, I could have done that virtually, you know. I think that's what happens in pop. A lot of people start using a lot of plugins and take a few shortcuts here and there, whereas for me, I wanted it to be kind of very organic, you know, playing real drums, recording real drums, all of the instruments, you know, very real, and a lot of care put into each one of them.
Nice. And then, so why do you think that phrase, pop music, gets such like a bad rep? Because that's one of the things that I like about you, is that you sort of embrace your identity as a pop artist. And I mean, especially if you aren't listening to pop music now, Bleachers, Muna, Charlie XCX are making really interesting things, yet no one wants to be associated with that label.
Yeah, for me, I guess it comes down to how you define pop music. And for me, pop music is popular music, and I guess commercially, it's just the commercial world, isn't it? You know, at the end of the day, I want my music to be popular, and I want to have a foot in the commercial world. I want my music to be heard by as many people as possible. So that means, you know, I want to get on the kind of more mainstream radio, and I want to try and get TV adverts and TV syncs and stuff like that. And so, you know, I have got to embrace the pop world to do that. And I think, like, especially one artist, I think you just mentioned there, Charlie XCX. I think she's kind of someone that I kind of respect quite a bit. because she is very poppy and she's very popular and very commercial. At least from what I can see on like social media and what I hear, I think she takes on everything herself as well. She's a big writer. She works with a lot of people. She is very involved in it. And I think the side of pop music that kind of gets the bad name, I think, is the whole kind of ghostwriting area, where there's a lot of people who are just singers, and they've just got about 7 or 8 writers behind them just churning out pop hits. I've done that whole thing before of like writing camps where they want you to write like 5 or 6 tracks a day, and it's just so dishonest and not organic in the slightest. And so that's where I guess I draw the line, is that like I'm doing pop commercial music, but I am doing it all myself. There are no kind of hidden writers, there are no hidden musicians or anything like that. It is all as you see it and as you hear it.
And that totally comes across. And again, the record Emerging Adulthood sounds great. Love the title of it. I know that you explained it in every interview, so I won't ask that. But where was the year where you felt that you aged the most, or that adulthood came for you, when you sort of look back on those years?
I think it came after the first album, where I found myself dropped from labels and without management, and I was very much alone. And I couldn't just let things slip, I couldn't let it just slip out of my hands. And so I had to keep going. And that meant me self-funding this record and self-funding tours, and suddenly looking after a 7-piece touring party all on my shoulders. And that was the moment where it was like, I've got to grow up. I've got to, I've got to find money. I've got to take out loans. I've got to really risk a lot of things here and just go for it. And so I think that was the moment where I had to just get organized, get my shit together, and just grow up, and be responsible.
Nice.
Sorry if I swore then. I don't know if I can swear.
No. We can always take it out, but I like having natural conversations, and profanity is a part of that. Damn it. And then one of the things that I also loved in the promotion of this record was the whole Dial Dan concept.
Yeah, man.
What did you learn from that? Hearing some of the messages or reading some of the texts?
Man, I learned that I've got great fans, and I know every artist is going to say that about their fans, but I really got to know people. I got to find out where they were from, their backgrounds, their troubles, their hobbies, their passions. I really got to learn so much about these people and why they follow my music and what it is that connects them to it and what songs they connect to most and why. And so all of it, all of these conversations, like the first week we did it was like 248 phone calls that I took, and just learned so much about people. And so it was great.
Now, you could call or text the line. Are you someone who prefers a phone call or text?
Yeah, we urge people to call. I can only respond to kind of so many texts whilst I'm taking a lot of calls. So I didn't get the chance to respond to a huge amount of texts, but I tried to take every call. And so we urge people to call, and mainly because I think there's the lost art of a phone call, of a phone conversation. Ringing a random number. It's nerve-wracking, I think. And once you get past the "Hey, how are you?" you don't know where this conversation is going to go. And I think that's a real magic moment, because some people, they'd ring up almost with a script.
Yeah.
But then as soon as that script kind of went out the window, it was it was freestyling, and that made for some really interesting topics and real interesting conversations.
And so, the phone call is a lost art, which I appreciate you sort of drawing attention to. Are you someone who, in your personal life, are you more of a pick up the phone and call kind of guy? Are you a text?
Immediately. If I didn't have to run social media and stuff like that, I would completely downgrade my phone to just like a basic handset to just ring people, because I think it's just things can so easily get read out of context in texts and tweets and all of that kind of stuff. I like the directness of a phone call, straight up.
And the storytelling in a phone call versus the storytelling in a text message.
Definitely.
Before I make us sound like too much of Luddites, I'll switch the question. If you could call anyone in the world, who would you want to call? Who would you want on the other end of the phone?
Wow, it's a good question. I don't know. I think my nan.
Aww.
And I know that's really quite cute and lame, but But yeah, I rang her the other day, and no matter how much of a tough time you're having, just kind of speaking to her is just she's very blunt. She doesn't beat around the bush, and so she'll tell you to shape up, get it together, and tackle it head on and stuff. She's quite a motivator, and she's always gives you a laugh. So I think as long as no matter where I am, as long as I can kind of ring my nan or like my mum and dad, it's good.
I was just gonna say, there's nothing lame about nanas and grandparents at all, especially if my nana's
It's just not rock
right
and roll,
now.
though, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. But nor should it be either.
Yeah, someone saying, I want to ring Slash or like someone like that. I don't know.
Exactly.
No.
But that's okay. That's okay. That's what makes you Dan Croll.
That's me.
So you do a ton of these interviews, which as a journalist I appreciate, but it must get repetitive. What do you wish that people would ask you about more often in these conversations?
You know what? They don't get too similar. Some, they've been kept me on my toes a bit. I had an interview yesterday. And one question that like really stumped me was she asked me to give reenact like a door-to-door salesperson's pitch of my album. So I just knocked on someone's door. How do I sell this album? Like how is it going to fulfill their need or something? And it was really tough. And so that was quite fun. I was like trying to get my mind into like, oh my God, I've just knocked on someone's door. I've got my album in my hands. I've got to sell it to them. And so I get all kinds of stuff. And I like it when people just ask, I guess, the kind of honest questions. This album touches on things like mental health, and that's obviously something that I want to speak about and put people at ease with and connect with people about. And so when people, it's nice to be asked about that, because sometimes it's a bit of a taboo subject. People feel awkward talking about it. So I like that kind of direct question about that kind of stuff.
Of course, and your openness about it is also something that is remarkable. So thank you for that. And then, so one of the questions that I always love asking people that's a little bit lighter and fluffier, if you had one song, it was last song at the karaoke bar, what song are you going for?
Last song at a karaoke bar? I probably previously have said Aha, Take On Me.
Oh, okay.
But I've done that, I've karaoke'd that so much I've started to get a bit sick of it now. But we were just listening to Dolly Parton in the van.
Okay.
And she's got that song, Here You Go Again, was it? Here You Go Again. That's such a tune. I'd probably just pick that. Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's a good one. And then I know you have a busy day and a lot of stuff to get to, so I'll make this my last question. Who are you listening to right now? Who has your ear?
Apart from Dolly Parton.
Apart from Dolly Parton, yes, of course.
There are 3 albums that I've been listening to over the journey so far. One is the Lemon Twigs with their debut album. That is such a good album. And ridiculous how young they are, and they self-produced that, and they're just amazing, the 2 brothers. Also, a band from England called Flight, Flyte. They've just released their debut album a few weeks ago. That's a really good debut album from them. And then also the new record from LCD Sound System. Really been enjoying that. It's like a welcome return for them.
All good choices, and if you are not listening to Emerging Adulthood by Dan Croll, damn it, you should be. Dan, thank you so much for the time today.
It's no problem at all. Thank you.